Good morning. Good morning. I am so glad and I am humbled to be here. I am the Reverend Dr. Regina Thomas. I am one of the newest members of the AFT family, as I've only been here just a couple of days over a month. I am glad to be here representing on behalf of our leadership who is in Canada doing great work internationally. And so I stand here welcoming you on behalf of the 1.6 million AFT members. And I know when you think of AFT, you just think of teachers, but we represent a broad spectrum of individuals from college professors to correction officers and the like. And so when you think of us now, look at us in a broader spectrum. The opportunity to come and join with your organization, particularly in my new position as the advocacy director for the civil, human, and women's rights. The opportunity to come and engage with those organizations not only in Washington, D.C., but in our states is very important. It is exactly why you are here, to advocate social justice across the country. Also, I am a minister where I pastor a church in Atlantic City. So you can see that my entire life has been devoted to social justice from some way or another, even in my faith-driven life, as I believe that we must reach out to the least, the lost, and the left out. And so as I encourage your activities here today, if there's anything that any of us can do while you are here joining us in our space, please do not fail to give us a call. One of my colleagues, my staff person that has been leading me for the last 30 days, as 85% of my staff is out in the field. They are at conferences, Black Lives Matter this weekend, NAACP, Urban League, and the like. But Connie, hold your hand. Anybody need anything, y'all just reach out to Connie. And I'm going to apologize because I have to step out to go across the street to the hotel to a meeting to understand the delegate selection process for the Democratic National Committee, but I commit to come back before you leave out of here to offer some conversations. And I would love to hear about some of the great things that you guys are doing. I know you have Wendy here that's going to talk about all, but I was a former Secretary of State of New Jersey, so I got some stories. I got some stories, so just know that I would love to mingle and have a conversation with you. Can somebody just be excited? And I am so excited to see so many women here today. I just want to shout that out. Just shout that out. That's just a personal shout out. Y'all don't, men, can y'all do me a favor? Say yeah. And that's not to interrupt the rest of your program, because as a African American pastor, I can stay here all day. I can even do better than the president. I might be able to hit Amazing Grace for you. So if you just go get the piano, I might be able to hit that. And so I'm going to let you finish the rest of your program, and I am committed to step back in an hour or so before you leave. Thank you guys for being a part of our coalition, a part of our family here at AFT. Thank you.
So, Regina, before you go,
Okay, I'm coming back.
you're going to be our next speaker because I want to hear those New Jersey stories. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm Nan Aaron, president of Alliance for Justice, and it is just a total pleasure to welcome all of you, women and men. What a great morning to be able to come and hear from one of America's great progressive voices and a true champion of justice, former Texas State Senator Wendy Davis. In addition to thanking Regina, I also want to thank Connie back there and Karen Zook for helping to organize this event. And I want to thank AFJ's interns and our staff and summer associates for their work on this event and so many other projects. But this year, I want to single out one very special person on our staff. Today is the last day for our Associate Outreach Director, Kelly McIntosh. Kelly, over the past 15 years, she has organized scores of events like these, been our ambassador to our own member organizations and to thousands of groups around the country, and generally worked miracles for us. Kelly, thank you. Can we give Kelly a round of applause? And Kelly has organized events for students like you all for years for us. Alliance for Justice believes that all Americans have the right to secure justice in the courts and to have their voices heard when government makes decisions that affect all of our lives. Alliance is a national association of over 100 public interest civil rights advocacy groups. These members are committed to progressive values and the creation of an equitable, just, and fair society. We fight to advance core constitutional values, preserve human rights, and ensure access to the courts for all Americans. Our work takes many forms. We encourage civic engagement and strengthen the ability of nonprofit organizations to be courageous, aggressive, and as effective as they possibly can. We work hard to break through that never-ending pattern of obstruction in the Senate so that President Obama's judicial nominees get a fair hearing and a final vote. And we do everything to make sure that the president's nominees are drawn from backgrounds that represent the full personal and professional diversity of the country and our legal profession. We're engaged in the long fight to counter the growing attacks on women and workers' rights, voting rights, and drastic restrictions on the ability of everyday people to use the court as an instrument of justice. As part of our efforts to increase awareness and stimulate activism, we release a short film every year at the end of August. 2 years ago, we looked at the national battle over reproductive justice in our video called Roe at Risk. A certain former state senator from Texas is featured. It's available online at www.roeatrisk.org, and there are DVD copies of it today. And in the months ahead, we'll be focusing on how the Supreme Court has threatened the rights of working Americans. In particular, how they've undermined our right to band together and bargain collectively for decent wages and working conditions. There will be much more on our website about this film. I hope not only that you look at this documentary, but come September, you arrange screenings of it on your campus, invite panelists to speak, tell your friends about it, and take action. Remember one thing. There will be, by 2018, 4 justices in their 80s, which means that the next president, Republican or Democrat, will be choosing not just and directing the future of the country, but also directing the future of the Supreme Court, not just for 4 years, 8 years, but for decades to come. And now, I am so thrilled to introduce one of our interns, Amanda Swenson, who will introduce our guest speaker. Amanda.
All right. So Hi, my name is Amanda Swanson. I'm one of the aforementioned interns, and I've been at AFJ for about 8 months now. First things first, we're going to get some housekeeping done. Make sure you get out your phones, follow us at AF Justice, follow at Wendy Davis and AFT Union, and be sure to live tweet the event, AFJ with Wendy and hashtag breakfast with Wendy. So before we get to the reason you're all here, in true DC fashion, I'm going to talk about myself. So my foray into activism sort of started when I was 8. I was a really weird 4th grader, and I decided that John Kerry 2004 was the absolute best fight I could get involved in. I was a single issue voter at the time. I relied entirely on my minimal understanding of then President Bush's support of the Yucca Mountain Project to inform my opinions. But regardless, I insisted that my mom take me down to the Kerry for President office in Reno, Nevada, and let me sign up to canvass. So as an 8-year-old, I was given exactly 1 block to canvass. One of the houses was my own, but I thought that I had found the absolute best way to spend a weekend ever, which is, I know, really nerdy. But I never really guessed at the time how much this would impact the way that I operated in the future. By 10, I was protesting for no-kill shelters. At 13, I threw my support behind President Obama's 2008 campaign, which was significantly more successful than my first endeavor. And by 17, I was helping OFA develop state strategy for Nevada in social media and communications. But it wasn't really until I got to college and saw firsthand the epidemic of sexual violence on campus that I found a cause in particular that I knew I really needed to fight for. Since then, I've done a lot of advocacy in as many forums as I can. From peer education programs to my internship here at AFJ, I've had the pleasure and opportunity to really get the tools to make an impact. But I think the most important part of being present in this movement are the activists that I've had the distinct privilege to work with. These individuals show me every single day what it looks like to be strong and poised and dedicated, and I've never in my life met a group of people who are so deeply committed to making progress and supporting their communities. Whether it's through a major action, a rally, a sit-in, or just a few words of encouragement, they show the entire world that in the end, activism at its base is about the people and about the community as a whole, not just individuals. Our speaker today shows us just that and is the epitome of what it means to be a fighter. At age 14, she began selling newspaper subscriptions to help supplement her family's income. At 19, she was caring for her baby daughter and holding down jobs to make ends meet. But she was never one to give up easily, as I'm sure we can all relate to. After finishing first in her class at Texas Christian University, she graduated from Harvard Law School and subsequently served 9 years on the Fort Worth City Council. But it was during her time as the state senator that Wendy Davis became a household name, and certainly when I first noticed. For 11 straight hours, she stood before the chamber and defended the right of millions of women to safe and legal abortion access. Also, I have the same tennis shoes. So her takedown of SB 5 was only the beginning. She has proved herself a tireless advocate for gun control, education access, veterans affairs, and, of course, reproductive justice, proving to countless young activists like myself that we really do have an ally in politics. So I'm proud and honored to introduce our speaker and one of my personal heroes, Wendy Davis.
Good morning. I'm so delighted to be here at AFT, and I have to give a shout out to AFT because they were incredible to me through my career as a state senator and in my gubernatorial run last year. Unbelievably generous and supportive of what I was hoping to do. And I hope as you think about organizations like AFT and you hear and you will through your careers and whatever it is that you choose to do, There's an attempt out there to make teachers the bad guy. Have y'all noticed that? And of course they're not. And neither are unions, and certainly not unions of teachers who are fighting to make sure that teachers get the kind of respect that they all deserve. So let's give a round of applause to AFT and thanks for what they do. Amanda, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. It was really fun hearing a little bit about you and what brought you to all of us today. And that's what I want to talk to you about you and why you're here. You have chosen, of course, to do something with your summer other than lounge around. And you may not have even admitted this to yourself yet, but you are, no question about it, the future leaders of this country. You bring with you ideas, big ideas, and vision. You bring intelligence and passion and heart, and you bring hope. You could be enjoying your summer doing so many other things, but instead, you've chosen an internship, probably unpaid, to work on something that matters. Somewhere along the way, like Amanda, you began listening to a voice deep inside of you that called to you, that asked you to consider something bigger than whether you could carve out a decent life for yourself. Something that called you actually to understand that you won't feel satisfied with a decent life, knowing the obstacles that so many others face in having it for themselves. A chance at a better tomorrow. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. And for most of you, regardless of how humble your beginnings were and regardless of your struggles, you've come to a place where you can feel fairly assured that a better tomorrow awaits you. But you can't forget all the rest, can you? You cannot forget that for whatever reason, all the rest of those folks who are working as hard as they can for a better tomorrow aren't going to find it. For the first time in generations of Americans, their hard work is not going to be enough to create a better tomorrow. So you've been called upon to work on that, to play some role in turning it around. Why do you suppose that is? Maybe you've spent some time examining what it is in the story of your life thus far that made you who you are, that gave you the drive that you have. Perhaps you haven't yet figured out where that drive came from, but I would encourage you to think about it and come up with an answer. Because to understand what drives you will empower you to tap into it when the bright light of your optimism can get murky and dishwater gray. And I can promise you, there will be those moments when your belief that you can make a difference will falter, but you will not succumb. Discovering what drives you will also help when you're trying to find common ground with someone who's on the opposite side of an issue or cause from you. One of the most valuable classes that I took in law school was a class called the Warren Court. And in that class, we were invited not just to think about precedent-building decisions, but instead to consider the people behind them, to consider the experiences that made them who they are. Who were these 9 white men on Earl Warren's Supreme Court who made pivotal decisions to end school segregation and interracial marriage bans and so many other controversial decisions against the backdrop of hostile state legislatures throughout much of the country? How did Earl Warren put together a unanimous decision to do those very difficult things? His example showed us the power of tapping into our shared humanity, which he was able to successfully achieve with his colleagues, though admittedly some were harder than others. With each of them, he worked to step into their shoes, to understand them, to find ways to draw from them the core beliefs and values that would help them arrive at those difficult decisions, appealing to their common and deep-seated sense of human justice. His own sense of that, of course, followed from his decision as California's governor to issue the order interring citizens of Japanese descent during World War II. He later wrote about the impact that that decision had made on him, seeing the human toll that his actions had taken, with families being torn apart and stripped of their dignity. He never forgot visiting them in those internment camps, and it formed a deep part of who he became as a Supreme Court justice. There seems to be little room for that kind of common sense approach in the political arena today, that ability to find common ground, to appeal to each other's shared sense of humanity. But I still hold out hope for it, and I hope that you do too. It's worth fighting for, if for any reason, because the policymaking that has flowed from politicians that have been elected in gerrymandered, voter disenfranchised states like mine in Texas has taken a particularly hard toll on women. A little insight on me, as Amanda said, the shoes that I walk in. I was one of those women whose life could be completely derailed by a flat tire on my car. I know the fear of sitting in the dark, wondering how I would cobble together the money to turn my lights back on. And I know that when lawmakers are indifferent to, or in some instances outright hostile to, creating a level playing field for women and their families, communities across this country suffer. Wage stagnation, income inequality, lack of access to childcare, lack of access to educational opportunities, lack of flexible work time, these issues hit women particularly hard. Add to this the fact that women are being stripped of their ability to exercise their constitutional rights to reproductive autonomy, and the injustice grows. So the stakes are high, which makes it all the more important for us to follow the example set by Earl Warren. I think we need to find the resolve to come together and find that common ground that appeals to something beyond ourselves and compels us to stand up for each other, and not just to stand, but to stand in each other's shoes. In fact, it was a little over 2 years ago, after having been fitted for a catheter in the early morning hours of June 25th, that I rushed out of my Austin apartment with a pair of running shoes in my hand. Later that morning, I would find myself wearing them on the floor of the Texas Senate with the words, "I intend to speak for an extended period of time on the bill," coming from my mouth. A pair of shoes that would come to represent the power of standing for our beliefs. And when I travel the country now, inevitably, someone will look down at my feet and ask, "Where are your pink shoes?" Those shoes, like those worn by hardworking folks every day throughout this country, tell a story about who I am, just as did the well-worn pair of pumps with nails protruding through the heels that I wore as a young single mom working 2 jobs to get by, just as did the shoes that my 6th grade educated 15-year-old grandmother wore as she rode across the Texas Panhandle, holding the first of her 14 children in her lap, sturdy, low-heeled leather lace-ups that she had borrowed from her mother to get married in when she was only 13. Or the story that my own 9th grade educated mom's white orthopedic comfort shoes told of her when she was a single mom raising 4 children, working in a low-wage fast food job and barely scraping by. Those remarkable women, my mother and my grandmother, like so many mothers and grandmothers in this country today, slipped on or laced up their shoes, fixed on a singular goal: to create a better opportunity for their children than they each had. So when I think about the battles that we are engaged in today, whether they are about voting rights or reproductive rights or criminal justice reforms or LGBT rights or economic justice or making sure that we have good folks on the bench to make decisions that reflect us all, I find myself thinking about the people who are behind all of those fights, the people who get us up out of bed each morning, even when we've been knocked down the day before, because we know that they're worth fighting for. I think about their shoes, and I think about the need for us, Earl Warren style, to put our feet into them. Somewhere in America today, someone's daughter, a 15-year-old young woman wearing a dingy pair of sneakers that have long since ceased to be white, will double knot their gray laces knowing that she'll be running around all day. She will rise before daybreak, feed and dress her months-old baby son. She'll rush down the street just in time to climb aboard a bus, lugging her baby, the stroller, and a backpack filled with yesterday's homework. She'll get off the bus, drop her child at daycare, and then run to catch a second bus, which will take her to her dropout recovery high school. In the evening, she'll do the whole thing in reverse, day after day, because she knows that getting an education is the only way to create a better life for herself and her son. Somewhere in America today, someone's mother, wearing black orthopedic shoes and the uniform issued by her employer, will clear the dishes from the dinner table tonight where her children are bent over their homework. In a little while, she'll climb in her car and her body will tense up as she prays that the motor will turn and start. And she will be on her way to her nighttime waitressing job at a 24-hour diner where she'll work for a guaranteed $2.13 an hour and hope for a better night of tips than the previous one. She'll put up with a lot for that to happen, even the occasional customer who treats her like she is an item on the menu. And when her shift is over, she'll return home to her sleeping children, now her turn at the kitchen table where she'll bend over a stack of bills, wondering which she can pay. Somewhere in America today, someone's sister, an 18-year-old young woman, her heart filled with dreams of attending college, wearing no shoes, her bare feet up in the stirrups of a gynecological table, will listen as a doctor glides a sonogram wand across her tummy. She'll avert her eyes from the monitor, but she cannot tune out the sound of the doctor's voice methodically describing, as required by law, the development of fetal limbs, heart, and skull. And when the doctor finishes, the young woman will dress. She'll put on a pair of sandals before heading home to wait out the prerequisites of the law until she can come back the next day and follow through with a decision that she had long since weighed and made. So, my fellow fighters for justice, and I know you all are, let's remember that behind our lofty ideals are people. Let's never forget that. People whose shoes we need to stand in. Not long ago, I was privileged to hear two women give testimony to the power that we gain when we set aside our differences and we work with each other and see each other through the lens of a shared experience. Robbie Damlin and Bushra Awad are unlikely friends. They are mothers on the opposite sides of a bitter conflict between their respective homes of Israel and Palestine, and they have both lost sons to the conflict. In their shared grief, they have forged an amazing friendship, one which gave them the resolve to turn their private tragedies into a force for change. When I heard them speak at the Women in the World conference earlier this year, I couldn't help but notice their footwear. Each was wearing a pair of black and white high-top tennis shoes, a recognition that despite their vast cultural differences and warring factions, they share a common bond. They are quite literally now wearing each other's shoes. I think we should strive for more of that today. We do see it from time to time. People from different walks of life coming together to protest the low wages of fast food workers, folks coming together to fight for marriage equality, people crying out against racial abuses by police, reminding us that Black lives matter, and the thousands of people who came together in the Texas Capitol 2 years ago to protest an anti-reproductive rights bill. Poignantly and beautifully, it was their voices, not mine, that carried that filibuster past the midnight deadline. The memory of that inspires me to believe in what can happen when we join together. And I hope that it inspires you too, because that power is in each and every one of us. The power to place ourselves in each other's shoes, the power to unite each with the other toward the common understanding of each other's human experiences of joy and triumph, failure and sorrow. The power to stand up for each other. Now, I know a lot of folks from your generation feel like the political arena might not be the place where you feel you'll make a difference. Maybe you feel that the political arena is a place where nothing good gets done, and I could understand why you feel that way. You'll be tempted to stand up in other ways, to exercise your desire to make the world a better place. And that's all fine and good. But make no mistake about it. We have to have people on the inside of the political ring in order to truly make a difference. Is it ugly? Yes. Is it hard? Yes. Does it feel like pushing a boulder uphill sometimes? Yes. But you've got to fight the temptation to believe that working within the political arena is futile. That's what the other side is hoping will happen, that we'll abandon the fight or be forced out of it. I've seen that in my own state, in Texas. Folks have become conditioned to believe that their voices just won't matter, so why bother? But as long as we buy into that, the problems of this country are only going to increase. I want to leave you by encouraging you to get in that ring and not just put your boxing gloves on, but put your boxing shoes on. And don't be dissuaded by getting knocked down every now and then. Lord knows I have landed on my keister a time or two. But I got to tell you, my mom and my grandma, they did not raise a quitter. And I am not done yet, and neither are you. We are only just beginning. Thank you all so very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Davis.
Thank
How
you,
inspiring.
Kelly.
And thank you also for offering to stay with us a little while longer to take questions from the audience. If there are individuals who have questions, we have 2 mics here in the room. I encourage you just to go ahead and line up at the mics.
Hi. Hi. Thank you for being here today. I was just wondering, how do you think we can engage college students to fight the stigma against abortion?
By telling our stories. I think there's unbelievable power in telling stories. There's an effort right now under the name 1 in 3, I think it's called. See, I love you're shaking your heads. You probably know more about this than I do. But it's doing a wonderful job of removing the shame and the stigma from abortion, inviting people to come out and tell their stories. The day of my filibuster, I think one of the most powerful things that really engaged people who were watching was the telling of stories. People who'd had their own experiences with abortion and who understood how important and precious the protection of that right continued to be. So have that conversation. Talk with your friends at school, men and women alike, and encourage them to share their stories and to not feel shame about exercising a constitutionally protected right that forms a part of making sure that they can be all that they can be.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bria Harden Boyer, and I attend an all-women's college in Atlanta, Georgia. It's called Spelman College. And I feel like it would be a disservice right now not to really speak about some issues that are going on, especially in your state with the death of Sandra Bland,
Yes.
which was ruled a suicide. And being that you are an advocate for not only women's rights, but like the inequality and the abuse of women, I feel, in my opinion, I would want to know not only your stance in the death of Sandra Bland, but what can we do to prevent these things from happening in the future, not only to women, but especially women of color who might not be able to wear those beautiful pink shoes that you had and speak
Yeah.
their stories.
Absolutely. So her story, of course, is unfortunately representative of so much of what we've been seeing in the media in the last couple of years primarily. But it certainly hasn't only been happening for the last couple of years. If you watch the video with the DPS officer, you show immediately that he becomes hostile with her and steps outside his role of professionalism. And whether Sandra's death actually was a suicide or not, and there will be greater investigations to try to get to the bottom of that, there's no doubt that his treatment of her that night led to her ultimate death, no question. And I think it's important for us to call it for what it is, to use it as an example for further training. It's disappointing and scary to me that that experience happens in a state like mine and in so many states around this country. Someone asked a great question the other day on Facebook, an Anglo woman. How many times have you ever been stopped for failing to signal a lane change? Well, I never have. And probably most white people would say they haven't either. But I imagine that many people of color could tell the story that they have. And that's a wake-up call for us to do something to make sure that we're reforming our criminal justice system and that people are treated fairly and not based on the color of their skin.
Thank you so much, and on behalf of Spelman College, we really encourage you.
Thank you, Bria. Thank you. Hi.
This really sucks being short. Sorry. I'm just gonna take it out. Okay. I'm also from Texas. I'm from the Dallas DFW area, so TCU is not far from where I live. I have two questions for you. The first is, how do you feel about selfies with interns? I'm actually not kidding.
I love a good selfie. I love doing selfies.
Okay, great. Okay. And also, the next question is, being that I'm from Dallas and I go to school in the middle of Missouri, which is in the middle of America, and the fact that I am a woman of color, what advice do you give to people like me when they're trying to make a difference, but like you said, their voices are not necessarily being heard? So what advice can you give for someone who feels disenfranchised, but also wants to do something, but doesn't necessarily have the resources to do it?
So think about your 8-year-old self and all those 8-year-old little girls that need to see someone like you fighting for them. And be inspired by that and believe in the power that you have. If you look at Congress right now, if you look at the court system, you don't see a lot of faces like yours there. You don't see a lot of faces like mine there, even. And we know that in order to really be representative of the concerns and the goals and the values of a diverse population in this country, we have to have diverse voices there fighting to make sure that those perspectives are understood and heard. So find that confidence in yourself to be able to do it. I will tell you that the first time that I ran for office, city council in Fort Worth, I lost. And I thought I was going to die. I literally did. Because it was the first time I'd ever tried at something and failed. Last year I ran for governor. I failed to win. But I didn't fail in fighting for something that mattered to me. And I didn't fail in spreading the message around my state about some of the injustices that were occurring there. I didn't fail to talk about money and politics and how it has literally taken away the voices of everyday people from the conversation. And I know that you have that in you because you're here today. and you're working on something bigger than you. So just tap into it. Start in whatever way feels comfortable to you, even if it's running for a position in your college system, and then keep going. And look for mentors, and I'm happy to help you along the way.
So, would you recommend law school or just?
I have no idea.
I love the fact that I have a law school degree, even though I didn't really love practicing law. I just felt like I learned so much through that experience about being analytical in my thinking and hopefully having the ability to articulate my thinking well. So I would encourage anyone who's considering a career in public service that law school is a great place to start, even if you don't have a burning desire to practice law.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Speaking of law school, my name is Georgia McLean. I am going to be a third-year law student at William & Mary
Congratulations.
in Virginia. Thank you. Thank you so much for speaking to us today. And you talked a lot about how your grandmother and mother strove to, sort of create a better life for you. Mm-hmm. And sort of in my own educational experience, I'm not sure that my parents' generation had the level of student debt that I'm going to have when I graduate. I consider myself lucky to have under $250,000 in student debt after 7 years of school. And I went to law school to be an advocate, to serve in public interest. And with that level of debt, it's almost impossible to do what I really want to do,
Right.
and be able to afford to live and do really anything. So how, as young people, can we sort of advocate for reforming that system of really burdensome debt without making it sound as if we're just complaining?
I don't think anyone feels like you're just complaining. I really don't. And I'm sure if you took a poll in this country today and you asked people how they feel about the spiraling costs of getting a higher education, you would find near unanimity in the belief that it has gotten far too expensive and out of reach of everyday Americans. There's so many families right now that are having to make a decision between sending one or both or all three of their kids to school and looking at enormous debt in order to do it. So let's take a step back and figure out how we got where we are. We got where we are because the leaders who have been in power have failed us in terms of making sure that college is affordable. Just to give you an example, in my own state, in a tough budget year about 10 years or so ago, a decision was made that rather than the state giving its normal share to the university system, it would deregulate tuitions and allow the colleges to raise those monies on the back of the families who were sending their students there. That had a tremendous impact, obviously, on the costs of college, simultaneously paired with the fact that student loans and the ability to access financial aid went down dramatically. So let's start with those elected folks who've obviously forgotten and left behind the fact that they probably went to school at a time when it was affordable, that they have the privilege of serving in office because they now have the resources to do it because they're not suffering under that crushing debt. And let's work to elect people who understand that enough that they're going to fight to change it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, I'm sorry. I've been ignoring the side of the microphone. Sorry.
I just wanted to say thank you for coming. I missed you at UC Berkeley this past semester because I had class. But it's awesome. Go Bears. I loved that you went, and I'm so glad I get to meet you now. Thank you for shaking my hand and everything. What you said really touched me. I'm like on the verge of tears right now. It was so empowering. And I just had a question. What is the biggest advice you could give someone who wants to run for office in the future?
Do it. Literally. And I know that sounds trite, but do it. Surround yourself with people who believe in you because you really need that in the hard moments when you're running for office. And believe me, you find plenty of critics when you've put yourself out there to run. but there's so much reward in it too. And even if you don't succeed when you first try, you gain from the experience. So don't be afraid of it. And start wherever feels comfortable for you. You know, whatever your passion is. Run for office in the environmental group at your school, or whatever it is that causes you to find that fight inside your belly. That's what you need in order to really be able to withstand some of the difficulties of running for office. But it's so worthwhile.
Well, thank you
And we
so
need
much.
you. Thank you. I'll go back over here while you're adjusting that.
Hi, my name is Michelle. Thank you
Hi,
so much for
Michelle.
being here. My question revolves around the smear campaign this past few weeks against Planned Parenthood that we've seen.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, they're very, like, it was very heavily edited videos, and a lot of people were still uncomfortable. And so I think Republicans are using that to try to like push something through Congress to defund Planned Parenthood, which just provides so many important services and really frustrates me. And I think, or my question is, what do you hope to see from Congress, and then how do you think that us as individuals can contribute to protecting the organization?
So I'm really encouraged right now that for the first time in a long time, reproductive rights organizations have come together. There's I think it's called All in All campaign that is working in a proactive way to advance reproductive rights for women. And the first mission is to end the Hyde Amendment, which of course means that federal funding cannot be used for abortion services, even though it is a necessary part of women's health care, and even though it's created a situation where women who are in the haves column have access to reproductive rights while women in the have-nots column do not. That's encouraging. It's not surprising that we find ourselves again with an attempt to distort facts in order to try to bring public opinion to a place that is anti-abortion. It's going to continue. It's never going to go away. And it's up to us to continue to talk about why that's such an important part of women's health care, and to make sure that we hold our head high as we talk about it. And we don't go into the corner and hide with shame, which is exactly what they're hoping to cause. We know how important that right is and that it's worth fighting for. But let's keep in mind, too, that when those conversations are taking place, they aren't even necessarily about the issue itself. Often what they're about is trying to sway public opinion and gin up enthusiasm from a base of voters who will come out and react to it. And what we have to make sure that we do is we stay strong in our voting as well. If I could point to one problem in this country that I wish I could wave a magic wand and fix, it would be to inspire the uninspired, the disenfranchised, to understand and believe in the power of their own voice. When conversations like this are taking place, it inspires the other side to come out and to vote. We need to make sure that we are inspired just as strongly to vote to protect the things that we know matter so very much to us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
Hello, Mrs.
Hi.
Davis. My name's Christian Jepson, and I'm a student at Northeastern University.
Hey, Christian.
I'm curious, short of more fundamental electoral reforms, such as reducing gerrymandering and making it easier for people to vote, what do you think are some important reforms that need to be made to our electoral system?
In Texas, we've tried for some time to do what the Supreme Court just upheld as allowed, and that is to create bipartisan, independent redistricting committees. Redistricting is the root of all evil. It truly is. Because through redistricting, it creates that disenfranchisement that I was talking about a moment ago. If you live in a place where your district has been drawn so that your voice will be counted out, you learn to believe that going to vote just doesn't matter. And even when your vote would count in a statewide election, for example, where gerrymandering doesn't have an impact, you've become conditioned to not participating and you don't participate. It's been a strategic and well-executed plan by the folks on the right. And it has skewed, unfortunately, the election of people whose voices are not reflective of so many of the folks that they represent. In my home state of Texas, where we have 27 million people, a little over 600,000 people elected one of our current US senators because they showed up in a primary and they voted. And there was no corresponding turnout in a general election to say otherwise. Now, does that person represent the 27 million people's perspectives in my state? No. Does he represent well the 600,000 people who showed up and voted for him? Absolutely. And so if we want to cure all of the problems that we're facing right now, number one, we've got to make sure we have good people running for office who inspire folks to believe in them and what they're going to do. And we've got to work as hard as we can to get beyond this voter apathy and get people to turn out. But it starts with redistricting, and that starts with neutral panels that draw districts at every census, after every census. Thank you.
Hi, wonderful pleasure meeting you. Pleasure
too.
being here as well. Wonderful opportunity. And so my name is Dylan Allen. I'm a student at Rollins College down in Florida, right in Orlando, where we see many injustices all the time in Florida. Rick Scott's a great guy. Great guy. Love him so much. But being the area next to one of Miss Anthony and Trayvon Martin cases, I see all the time a lot of different injustices. And I'm seeing things like Sandra Bland, and I want to be able to take it outside of the Facebook realm that I'm looking at and sharing it with others. I want to be able to take it outside to actually work with the root of the problems, with educating police officers, with getting more the community involved in these decisions, helping police officers to make sure that they are getting a very diverse atmosphere so that they're not being stuck to their prime privileges and lack of experiences. My point being is that I want to try and prevent more cases like Trayvon Martin, Mr. Brown, Mrs. Bland. What can I do, though, beyond that? One thing my mom suggested was that many municipalities offer advisory boards for police police commissions.
That's right.
But other than that, I'm very lost and I'm very ignorant in what a normal citizen can do to change the scope and the culture that we're seeing to become more and more prevalent in our nation.
So sometimes we get overwhelmed and we want to solve the whole big problem all at once, right? But it helps to start where you can have a success and build upon that and build upon that. And your mother gave you great advice. I was about to tell you the exact same thing. Go to your local police community and see about, if one does not exist, working to create some sort of an advisory panel, committee, that will look at the acts and practices and training of the police officers in your community and see what you can do to make sure that there's a greater sensitivity and better training. But again, not to be repetitive, it all goes back to who we elect, right? Because who we elect will ultimately be making these decisions, whether they're city councils or county commissioners or state representatives or Congress people. They're the ones who are making the decisions. It's fascinating to me to watch how quickly the issue of sanctuary cities spiked, went to Congress, got an immediate action. Think about that. Talk about wanting to solve the big picture all at once. An incident created an awareness, created a reaction, created an immediate response at Congress. If we had the right people representing our perspectives in Congress, the same thing would happen when a Trayvon Martin situation occurs or a Sandra Bland. There would be an incident, there would be a response, and there would be a reaction. But unless and until we put people in those offices who are reflective of the concerns of everyday folks in this country, we're not going to see the kind of response that we want. But work one at a time, individually, where you can, to make that difference. It really does matter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And run for office, please.
Hi, thank you for being here. My name is Lena. I'm a incoming freshman at NYU. So I wanted to address like a very major issue right now, the treatment of undocumented immigrants, specifically trans undocumented immigrants. The situations and conditions they are put in are very much dehumanizing. Do you have any plans of addressing that issue through legislation or any other forms of action in the future?
Well, I certainly hoped to in my state, and it was one of the primary reasons for my run for governor. You know, Texas has quite a reputation in terms of undocumented immigrants and the way immigration is politicized there. You probably saw that Donald Trump went to the border of Texas yesterday.
Yeah.
It carries its own unique brand of being politicized in order to gin up sentiment and turn out votes. So once again, when we know that these issues gin up the other side, we've got to have an equal response or better response than that. If we aren't electing people to make sure that we are treating fairly the undocumented among us, we're going to continue to see these problems.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, thanks for giving me this time. First of all, I'm gonna introduce myself and tell you where is my accent from. Originally, I'm from Democratic Republic of Congo, but I've lived in Texas for 5 years. I go to TCC, Tarrant County College.
Oh, you did?
Yes,
That's
ma'am.
where I
Thank you.
started too, Tarrant County College.
Thank you. I'm here in DC for the summer with the Fund of American Study. I'm actually interning at National Immigration Forum. It's just across the street right here.
Excellent.
Those are the people who informed me about this event, and I'm glad to be here with you guys. I have a question, and I will need some thoughts and advices from you. I am living in Fort Worth, and I do know if in Fort Worth, in Dallas-Fort Worth, we do have a huge community of Africans who have moved here for more than 60 years, and some of them have become even US citizens. But my concern is a lot of them, they're not engaged in what is happening in the community. They're not living on the African American dreams. How, as a community organizer, how would you advise, or what type of message would you give to those people so they can be aware of what is going on and prepare their kids, the new generation, to live American life? Thank you.
Thank you. So nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice
and
to meet
love,
you too.
Love hearing a little bit of your story. Education is the key. You probably know that, right?
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sure you've benefited tremendously
ma'am.
from what you've come to understand. And for a lot of folks, detachment occurs because of a lack of really understanding and a fear that if they attempt to weigh in, they won't do it well because they don't feel like they know enough. A lot of people don't vote for that reason, too. So go back to your community when you do, and one by one, and hopefully create some community gatherings where you can bring people together and talk about issues that are of concern and how their voices can make a difference. And then encourage them to choose an issue. One of my favorite organizations in Texas is a group called the Texas Organizing Project. And what I love about them is they take people in communities who feel disenfranchised, and they help them find an issue that they can work on together and find success in that. Even if it's something as simple as getting the streetlights fixed on their street. Having a win is encouragement to continue to work because you understand then the power of your voice. So think of a win and help guide that win. Even if it feels small, you'd be surprised at how empowering it can be.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alex O'Brien. I work for Representative Brad Ashford of Nebraska. And my question is, I'm an intern, so I'm answering phones all day, every day, and which I love. But my because I get to talk to the constituents. My question is that how can we as interns who are talking to the people, who are talking to the constituents, help them understand that what our representatives are doing is like what they need to do and is the right thing when they're opposed to what the most likely the representative is going to vote for.
Yeah.
Like Planned Parenthood, a lot of people in our district are opposed to Planned Parenthood, but Planned Parenthood is a great organization and it allows a lot of things to happen in education. So what can we reinsure to the constituents to help them understand that our representative is making the right choice, kind of to sway them to be okay with the decision?
Well, sometimes you won't sway people, okay? Sometimes you won't. The best that you can do is try to educate them on where your representative is coming from, whether that's a deeply held belief in the constitutional protected right to reproductive decision-making, whether it's because he understands and appreciates the incredible work that Planned Parenthood does in making sure that women have contraceptive care so that they don't face an unplanned pregnancy, making sure that women who don't have health insurance have access to cancer screenings and other life-saving counseling and screenings that occur at Planned Parenthood. The best you can do is try to educate them softly, not combatively, on how and why it is that your member is voting and believes as he does. And hopefully, even if they don't agree with you on the phone, you've planted a little seed that makes them think twice about their position.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Aisha. I'm a graduate student at the University of Georgia, but I'm interning for Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee from Texas.
Oh, she's a badass.
She is. And I really enjoy working for her. My question is, how do you suggest getting organized with different minority communities to address some of these issues? Obviously, the American Muslim community has been disenfranchised very many times. The Hispanic community, LGBT, different minority groups. How do you suggest we gather them together to face some of these issues that we see every day in our communities?
Inviting them to do it, inviting them to gather. I found in my campaigns that I've run that going to churches is a great way to talk to people. It's a great place to find a myriad of folks from the community, different socioeconomic and ethnic backgrounds who are there together to talk to them in that situation. And hopefully you can find a way to bring people together like that. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee is a powerful speaker, and she does an incredible job of inspiring people, and she spends a lot of time in her church community doing that. So follow her lead and ask her how she's done it in her community, because I think she's done a particularly good job of bringing diverse perspectives together and helping them understand their common interests in electing representatives that will listen to them and fight for them.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so before I go, I want to say something to the women in this room. Now, the young men in this room probably came in here with a little bit more of a, yeah, I'm going to run for office one day, right? Women, grab that part of yourselves, okay? And do not for a moment believe that you are not qualified or that someone else is more qualified or you're not quite ready. You're going to have your kids first. You're going to be successful in your career. No. Believe in yourself, because we need you. Women in this country need you. And you all are very special, or you wouldn't be here. So own it, and please do something with it, all right? Thank you very much for having me.
Let's give her a big, big, big round of applause. I see a selfie going on over here. Thank you, Wendy, for your leadership, wisdom, inspiration. Thank you all. Give us a call when you're running. We'll help you. And go forth, do justice, and we'll see you here maybe next year. And in the meantime, stay tuned for our film. You will love it. You will love it. And we hope you show it on your campuses. Have a good rest of your summer. Thank you.